tonight we've got Dr. Elwood Watson. He's a professor for East Tennessee State University. He teaches history, gender studies, as well as African American studies. He's the author of numerous books, numerous articles. But tonight he's talking about his most recent book. It's Keepin It Real, Essays on Race in Contemporary America. His next book, Talking About You, Boo, Advice for the 21st Century Man, will be published later this year. So thank you all, and please join me in welcoming Dr. Watson.
Thank you, Bill, and thank all of you for attending this evening. This nice, beautiful early March evening, and now that we're on daylight savings time, that can be trying for some people to get here as early as they do, or the time they do. So I thank all of you for whatever you had planned for this particular Monday night coming to hear this particular discussion. So thank you very much. As Bill said, I have come tonight to talk to you about Keepin It Real, Essays on Race in Contemporary America, as well as the Trump era in general, contemporary era of Trump. I'm going to keep this talk relatively brief because I want to get into the question and answer session, okay? I want questions and answers. I want to hear what some of you any kind of questions, comments you guys have to say, and we'll so that we're happy to entertain those questions, okay? So what I want to do is, yes, America itself has always had an issue when it comes to race. Race is pretty much been the cornerstone of America as well. Since African Americans, or people of African descent rather, arrived on the shores of America, race has been an integral issue as it faces this country. Now, race is just not confined solely to African Americans. We can talk about Latino Americans, we can talk about Arab Americans, we can talk about Asian Americans, we can talk about Americans of all races, East Indian Americans. However, African Americans, with the exception of the Native Americans, are one of the longest groups that have ever been here on our shores. And the history that faces African Americans has been distinctive and unique as opposed to many other ethnic groups. Every other ethnic group has had their history and share of tragedy on one level or another. But particularly in the United States, African American experience is unique in that other groups that came to this country came with a certain degree of voluntarism. That was not necessarily the case for African Americans. This does not mean they were coming to America because they wanted to do blah life. They came, but they may be very well escaping unpleasant conditions in their native lands. But nonetheless, they still decided to come to America by choice, and Ellis Island welcomed them, for the most part, with open arms. That was not the case with African Americans. African Americans were brought to a nation that they had no on the other side of the world, that they did not come freely. Many did not, and not all. They were brought here as a people. We were brought here, brought by culture, diet, religion, basically humanity. You were enslaved. Okay, we were not workers, despite what people nowadays in the recent books and things you read talk about. They were workers. Okay, workers in general get compensated for their work. Slaves did not get compensated for their work. Okay, so slaves were not workers. Slaves were enslaved. So we need to really keep that right now. My book, Keepin It Real, Essays on Race in Contemporary America, is a look at a lot of essays, particularly the post-Obama era and the days of the Trump era. They look at a variety of issues and look at a variety of topics. For example, one of my essays deals with Aretha Franklin. And Aretha Franklin was one of the as we talk about Women's History Month, Aretha Franklin was one of the most iconic artists in our nation's history. Okay, Aretha Franklin herself, you all know Aretha was very, very, very innovative. Aretha, was the queen of soul. And I think, she was very, very vocal cords, or, second, very few people, I'd say probably Barbara Streisand, Whitney Houston, Judy Garland. I put her in the category of those ladies as far as right. Not necessarily Ella Fitzgerald. Ella Fitzgerald was good. She had her own distinct voice, but I call that as vocal range as far as vocal range. But I would put her, vocal range. I put Aretha Franklin in the category of Streisand and Garland and Houston. Chaka Khan, perhaps. Patty LaBelle. Those are, I would say, the highlight singers. That being said, when Aretha passed away in 2018, America lost, one of the most iconic singers of all. Aretha was one of the ladies who was known for her iconic activism. She was not overtly politically active, but she was definitely known for her activism. Remember, she supported Angela Davis 1970, but she was out of the country, so she couldn't post bail for it, despite many of her family members, her father in particular, and others, advised her against that because they thought Davis was too political and it could damage her career, which was in the relatively early stages in the early 90s, late 60s, early 70s as well. When Angela Davis was on the FBI's most wanted list. She dominated the Grammys during the early 1970s, was almost called the Aretha Award, because Aretha won, so every year she won the Grammys. It was so, just because of her popularity, her innovative, her songs. By the late 1970s, mid-70s, her career cooled off a little bit, as other singers like Freda Payne, Roberta Flack, Donna Summer, excuse me, and others became more just as popular. Denise Williams in the circuit. Her career, obviously made a really, as many of you know, her career made a major impact in the late 1980s, when she came back with Freeway of Love, and I Knew You Were Waiting for Me with her and the late George Michael. So she was introduced to a whole new generation of fans. Although I think within the black community, she was always known, even children, all of us knew about Aretha Franklin from our older brothers and sisters or whatever, particularly black baby boomers and younger, listened to Aretha Franklin. So even when we were little kids and stuff, we knew who she was and knew about her and knew who she was to be a black lady. And also other communities, she was very popular among white baby boomers as well. She was extremely as well. I'll tell you, one of my roommates one time when I was living at my doctoral university name, he goes, "Elwood, you're a good roommate, but there's only one thing you do that's kind of problematic." And I said, "Okay, well, what is that?" He goes, "You play Aretha Franklin a little too much." It shows you how much I liked her. I loved her. I loved Aretha Franklin. She's one of my favorite artists. And just, I remember too. Who can forget? You remember in 2015 when she bought down the house at the Kennedy Center Honors, and it's on YouTube where she sang a tribute to Carole King, and she herself was a Kennedy Center Honor in 1994, honoree in 1994, and she sang for "You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman," which is one of her signature hits, and she sang for Carole King, and she bought the house down literally. People stand up cheering, and just a very tour de force performance. So that was something that was really, really mesmerizing to watch and see. So Aretha Franklin is one of my essays in my collection of essays on Keepin It Real, essays on race and contemporary America. And I also talk about Michelle Obama, former First Lady, who was obviously the first black First Lady in our nation. So that she was a very, very obviously intelligent, Princeton grad, Ivy League, Harvard Law grad, and very, very popular First Lady. But she herself was also the victim of not so kind, language from certain people of her detractors. People made comments about her physical appearance, and I'm like, and I don't know why, because she's a very attractive woman. So I don't know, most people made comments about her physical appearance. She was considerably more attractive than them. Let's be honest. I mean, I was like, really, I was like, have you looked in the mirror yourself? Really, come on, look at her, look at you. I mean, I know it sounds flippant, but I mean, these people were. I was like, this is not a bad-looking woman. Okay, she's not a bad-looking woman. So my point is, she's in shape and everything else. I mean, so my point is that, but she was known, in questions about whether she was a woman and all these type of things that deal with sexuality and dynamics that have always been historically associated with black people anyway, and I thought, she handled it with grace and dignity and class, but she was definitely, one of the most, intelligent, she was kind of a Renaissance First Lady in many ways. Her activism was more subdued, and it wasn't quite as some other First Ladies perhaps, or many others, but she looked at, nutrition, and she also looked at military families and the dynamic. This is a woman who grew up in humble beginnings and grew up on the south side of Chicago and was able to go to Princeton University and managed to become one of the most, pretty much, I won't say at least a Horatio Alger story, but definitely it was a story about the American dream. And it was based on somebody who grew up in humble beginnings, like many Americans, and was able to achieve a very, very spellbinding, noteworthy accomplishments in her life. So I think that's another essay I have in there, and I also talk about in that particular essay, I talk about how she remained dignity and classy despite multiple attacks on her and her husband, and even in some cases of their children, or grown women now, grown women. So that was a factor as well. The Trump years, President Obama became elected in November 2008. For many people, that was a milestone in race relations, and anybody who studies American history and is a historian, as I am, knows how noteworthy that particular event was. Yes, we're talking about a nation that's had a long journey when it comes to race, and we're still on a journey as it comes to race. And for any individual to be able to succeed in the manner that he did, a nation that not until 1964 had enacted a civil rights bill. The following year, in 1965, a voting rights act in the South, nationwide, but it particularly impacted blacks in the South, many of whom in that region of the country were not able to vote. And then within 40 years, elect an African-American president to the presidency. That is in itself remarkable. I mean, that's how you know what other nation probably could have done that in such a short period of time. This does not excuse the sins and the past injustices that have been perpetrated among African Americans, people of color, certain other people of color, past and present. But in and of itself, that in itself is a milestone. There are people who were overjoyed. If any of us remember, some of you might have been younger at the time, but if anybody looks at the footage, you see people crying. You see Reverend Jesse Jackson crying, Gage Park, Chicago. You see Oprah Winfrey's out there at the audience, looking. There are people of all races. You have young people, black and white, hugging each other, and manners like that. So it's really a very joyous and momentous occasion. The news media went to Spelman College, Morehouse College, these are HBCUs, historical black colleges, both in Atlanta. There were some over in North Carolina A&T, which is in Greensboro, 3 hours away from West here, and other places in Howard University in Washington, D.C., and other landmark African-American institutions, interviewing black students, looking at this dynamic and seeing how significant this was, and it definitely was. I remember the next day, or that night rather, calling some of my siblings, and we were talking, and just how, great it was. The local newspaper called me here in Channel, the Johnson City Press, and asked me my thoughts on it. I said, well, I think it was a wonderful evening that America decided to elect an African American as president. And he won, Barack Obama won, with a coalition of young people of all races, women, large portion of African Americans, significant portion of Hispanic Americans, Asians, and East Indians. These are groups, and pretty much all minority groups, non-white groups, voted for Obama over John McCain, the late John McCain, his competitor for the presidency. He still got a number of white votes, and particularly white liberals. He didn't get the majority of white votes, okay? He still did not get the majority of white votes. And this was evident, the dissatisfaction, while it was great euphoria and great happiness of the fact among certain quarters that America elected a black president, there was also disdain and anger and resentment. White nationalist groups said there was traffic on white nationalist websites that increased 80% over what they had done at that time. There were people who called in on radio shows that they told them some radio shows shut down for a couple of days, and websites said, look, here's our comments, you're gonna have to comment in a manner that's respectful, and they gave guidelines of what would be acceptable, what would not be acceptable. And if you listen to this extremely right-wing talk radio, which I did over the past couple days after his election, there were some people people said this is not acceptable, made some pretty profane comment. Some people said it was ridiculous, it was outrageous to see a black person, and some of these other words, sleeping in the Lincoln bedroom. They felt that was something that was not supposed to be the case. And let's be honest, there are people who would much rather see the Obamas cooking and cleaning the White House and changing the sheets in the Lincoln bedroom as opposed to be sleeping in it. Okay, so they would definitely feel like it. Some people said it made him sick to his stomach to see some of Obama's relatives and Michelle's family members. They were in the East Room of the White House walking around and stuff like that as well, and the mother and stuff. They said, that just one person said this was almost just unnerving for them to see people of color occupying the White House and that thing. So I was I was like, well, get used to it. This is the first family now. Okay, so at least for the next, at that time 4, and then eventually 8 years. So this is what it is. So it's there. That being said, there was opposition from immediately as soon as he got in. Mitch McConnell, who's the Senate Majority Leader from Kentucky, Republican, remember his first goal. He said, our goal was to make Barack Obama a one-term president. Okay, that's what he said. So it's clear their goal was to oppose every single piece of legislation, or as much as they could, in an effort to please some of their constituencies, which many of their communities did not vote for President Obama. So for the outset, there were definitely talks about whether he was born in the United States, whether he was king, just things that were largely totally based on race. And people can look at it any way they want to, but that was largely based on race. Why would you question? Don't you think the McCain campaign, the Clinton campaign, all these would have made this an issue, or would have certainly have made this information available, that somehow he was not born in the United States? there's a newspaper in Hawaii, Honolulu, whatever the newspaper was, and that has, you know, a lot of times usually do, when I was born, they would always have recent births in the newspaper, you know, and his birthday says, you know, August 4th, 1961, okay? Hawaii became a U.S. territory in 1959, as did Alaska, okay? Based on that, exactly. And that being said, Obama himself was a U.S. citizen, okay? So we know that's the case. But that was large. It didn't really care at the end of the day whether he was a citizen or not, because if you think about it, they wanted to amend it, some people wanted to amend the Constitution so that Arnold Schwarzenegger could run for president. We know he wasn't born in the United States. We know he was born in Austria. So we know that had to be racially motivated. That was clear, nothing but racial, you know, was he there, was he Kenyan, you know, and all this type of, you know, logic. I remember when I was at the gym, the local gym, one of the local gyms here in town, I was in, one lady was like, she goes, well, I'm just telling you, we got a person in the White House who's, you know, he's not an American. He is just not American, that's all. I mean, I was like, wow. And I mean, I've seen the time where I would argue with someone like that, but I was like, that person's probably so far gone, I'm not sure what I can really say. You know, I mean, this person's just, we've got somebody from America who's not, and really America who's been installed in the White House. So I guess, you know, the Illuminati, whoever, you know, put him there. So, you know, so that's the mentality that we have among certain sectors of society. And there are all kinds of things that happen that really, you saw during the 2010 State of the Union, when he gave the State of the Union address. Joe Wilson yells out, Representative Joe Wilson, you lie, and he eventually apologizes for that. But I don't recall any State of the Union in recent history that any congressman would yell out to the president, you lie, as he gives a speech. You didn't see that with Clinton. You didn't see that with Reagan. You didn't see that with Bush Sr. You didn't see that with Bush Jr. You know, you haven't seen that with Trump yet. So my point is, that shows you the disdain and that racism that was, you know, accompanying, you know, President Obama, and you know, and the birth of him, and those type of things as well. So yes, he was the victim of racial animosity. Now, some people were upset at the fact they felt he didn't respond to it well enough, or he didn't talk about race well enough. Well, there is some truth to that for Obama. He talked about race for all the right-wing commentary that he's always brought up race and everything else. Actually, information and statistics and showed that he talked about in the public race less than any other president since Franklin Roosevelt. He talked about race less than any other president than Franklin Roosevelt. We're talking about the 1930s and 40s, so more than half a century ago. If anything, I think he made an effort. I think in some ways, I'll be honest, I thought he was probably a little too cautious on certain ways when he talked about race. That being said, I also realized he had to walk a very fine line being the first black president of the United States. So therefore, he was kind of like Jackie Robinson in baseball. He realized there were certain demeanors and certain behavior that he had exemplified in public in an effort to get where he was at that time. So I can understand why he was reluctant to bring up race. We saw that with the Henry Louis Gates situation in 2009, when he made a comment that the Cambridge police acted stupidly. And the press, supposedly left-wing press and right-wing press, went insane. So in order to get that off the front pages, he had a beer summit. You remember when, you know, Officer Crowley and Henry Louis Gates and Vice President Biden as well. But I think he realized at that point that anything he made about race, that his opponents would use, try to distort, amplify, distort, and make it useless cannon fodder as well. So he knew he had to be very, it was a delicate balance, and a delicate line he had to walk when it came to race. And I understood that. But that being said, that still doesn't mean I don't think he could have probably said some things about race, whether it was the Trayvon Martin situation and others. He did make a comment that Trayvon, if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon. That didn't get certain people happy either. But in many ways, Obama spoke code to black people. So people knew what he was saying, and the black community knew what he was saying when he said that. You know, but if I had a son, he would look like Trayvon Martin, who was killed by George Zimmerman, you know, as well. So that was an example of that. But race was something that he really had to be very delicate about and walk a fine line. We see, as the Obama years went on, the economy was in a free fall when he came into presidency. So after his free fall, he got us, rescued us. There was criticism about how he handled the Wall Street bankers. Some people thought he should not have bailed them out. But I think had he not bailed them out, had he not brought in a stimulus package, he probably would have been in a depression, not a recession, a depression. Okay, people didn't realize the stock market was in free fall in 2008. You know, so universities were losing 25% of their, endowments and stuff. You know, if I'd have been a college president in 2008, I don't know if I could sleep tonight. I mean, if I, because I'd have been just, man, this is, there was some radical changes that had to come. So, he gave us, cash for hungers. He gave us a stimulus package and a lot of other things that kept us out of depression. And I think that's something he didn't get a lot of credit for as well. So, and by 2015, the economy has got a little better. It's running through some things right now, but people talk about the economy under better Trump. But that recovery really started in early 2015. That recovery really started in early 2015 as well. Because by early 2016, gas prices were going down to $1.98 stuff. I had to do a double check. I said, these 1990s prices now, because for a while, during the Bush years, gas was almost as high as it's like, as Paul Mooney, the comedian, said, I want a gallon of gas, not a lot at Starbucks. Gas was $5 a gallon in certain places in the country, and by 2015, 2016, it was going down some places like $1.79, and it's, kind of stabilizing there, but it's nowhere near as high as it was about 10 or 15 years ago as well. And that was because of the decisions that President Obama made, as well. Now, there was deep dissatisfaction among certain quarters of the right wing and others with President Obama's election. Right-wing groups were mobilized behind the scenes on many levels, and there were definitely anger and resentment that manifested itself in many ways. Donald Trump comes along and decides to run for president in late 2015, talks about make America great again. That's MAGA, make America great again. That could be many things to many people, and some people think that could be code. Okay, and the Democrats' response was, which was, I thought, a good response. America's always been great. We don't even make a good great. He throws his hat in the ring, and he runs against a very, very solid, established Republican field. One of the most credentialed Republican fields in some time. More so than 2012, when Mitt Romney, senator from Utah, was the Republican nominee, eventual Republican nominee for president. But if you look at 2008, that was a pretty good, McCain had a pretty good couple people he had to run against. Donald Trump had one of the most impressive people he had to run against. They had governors and senators and distinguished people. Romney's 2012, these were accomplished people in their own right, but it wasn't necessarily the strongest field of people to run against. So it wasn't, Obama was blessed with a relatively weak field of people to run against. It was almost like Bill Clinton in 1996. Bill Clinton was blessed with a relatively weak field of people to run against. Okay, and I think that has a lot to do with your competition as well.
You're talking about in 2008?
Yeah, we're going to take questions.
No, you said that he was running against a weak field. In 2008, he was running against Hillary.
Obama was running in 2008. I said he had a pretty strong field. I said Mitt Romney had a weak field to run against in 2012. And that's what I said. Mitt Romney had a relatively weak Republican field. I said Donald Trump had a pretty strong field for Republicans to run against in 2016. And a lot of times it has a lot to do with it. Right now, the field that's running against the Democrats was running. It was pretty much a two-man race right now. So, it was a pretty impressive field too. They got senators and a lot of stuff as well. So a lot of that has a lot to do with it. That being said, it was really impressive to me how Donald Trump was able to go in and do what he did. He didn't go on TV. The press gave him a lot of airtime, and some of them had eventually admitted buyer's remorse. He could call in, whereas other people had to be on TV in order for them to be interviewed. So, but to go in and governors and senators like Jeb Bush and just very cases of Ohio, and I think Donald Trump won every single primary, I think, except for Ohio and maybe Iowa. But just to go in there and just 1, 2, 3, 4, and just demolish his competition the way he did. That shows you where the party was and the base of the people within the Republican Party were at. They were looking for revolution and looking for a radical change within the Republican Party. He pretty much took over the Republican Party and is the Trump Party now. That's what he was able to do. And somebody who had no experience in politics that I know of ran for public office, to be able to do that, that's unprecedented. I don't know any president we've really had ever. Well, George Washington, but he was a military general, but most presidents before that time had some kind of experience, whether it was no more than representative, whether it was being a governor, being a senator, representative, had some type of political background before they became president of the United States.
Eisenhower's, but he was a
general.
He was a political general.
But yeah, and Eisenhower as well. But there were very few people. Barack Obama didn't have the strong, he was representative of Illinois and a senator. Abraham Lincoln, two distinguished presidents. But my point is they had some degree of background. Trump was a reality TV show host and a businessman in New York, known to be as well. But becomes the 45th president of the United States of America. that in itself shows you where the country fell. Now, some people like Van Jones initially argued and said he thought it was a white lash. That was his term. He called it a white lash against, the first African American president. I think there was some resentment. I think Trump, how I see it is this. I think there was a segment who voted for Trump based on racial issues. Yes, I do think there was some who did. I think there's also a segment who voted for Trump based on economic issues. Because there were some of those people who did vote for Obama in 2008, 2012, but did move to Trump in 2016 over Hillary. And then I think so there were a variety of issues as well. Now that being said, and some others perhaps were religious issues, they may have felt, the religious right, a segment of them felt maybe that he would incorporate and deliver for them. And which ironically he has done. If you think about it, the president who's delivered the most for the religious right as far as Supreme Court justices and issues on reproductive rights and of that nature is a man who was politically non-ideologically for that. Who's voted for Democrats in the past as well as Republicans. Many people like Ronald Reagan and people today had initially back in the 80s and 90s didn't always deliver for them. They gave them lip service, but Donald Trump, a man who has not historically been associated with the religious right, has probably been the most effective president for the religious right. And you see how many of them have made excuses for him. Well, none of us are perfect. Bill Clinton, and but I'm not going to know what Bill Clinton did with Monica Lewinsky in those situations, but our White House has to have a higher standard. But all of a sudden now that Trump has delivered, all of a sudden, well, none of us are perfect. We're all sinners in the hands of our God. So, dynamics have changed, and so that the talk has kind of changed. It shows you where you really is committed to your moral values, or was it more political expediency and then a political agenda that you wanted to enact. So we see that it was probably more about politics and than any sense of morality. I'm not saying that every single voter, there are many people who are religious and part of religious right who do practice what they preach and they have religious piety and they have a value system. But on many levels, it was also about politics and getting an agenda enacted. And I think we see voter suppression taking place in certain places. Just last week, Super Tuesday primary, we saw lines. Some people said they had to stay in line for six hours to vote, and some still did it. They decided to do that. But I'm saying there are all types of closing polling places, in certain places, and you have to move it here or have to have a certain kind of ID and all these dynamics and things as well. Now we do want fair and equitable elections. Nobody's saying we should have corrupt elections by any means, but there is also ways and roadblocks and ways to try to make it much more difficult for people to vote, or people they perceive to be voting for the Democrats, and that tends to be historically college students and others as well. But we see that dynamic, so there is active manners of vote suppressions that have manifested themselves as well. Now back to 2016, I think one of the reasons why Donald Trump was able to do what he did was because Hillary Clinton herself was not a strong candidate. We just have to be honest with it. Hillary Clinton was not a good candidate. First of all, she had high negative ratings even when she was first lady. She was liked by certain people, but even as a first lady, probably one of the most controversial first ladies since Eleanor Roosevelt. And she was just not liked. There was also, I think, Clinton fatigue as well. And we already knew her negatives were in the 50s when she started. Now, why would a party run somebody who their negative ratings are already in the 50s for president? That in itself is just not a good sign. And she is, nobody can question her ability to probably do the job. I don't think anybody questioned that. Credential-wise, was probably the most well-qualified person to be president, to be honest with you. Secretary of State. Not necessarily was Secretary of State, senator from New York, wife of a former president. So we definitely know she knew the politics of it, worked in the Senate, and probably could have got some things made allies in the Senate. And because she was considered a good senator when she was senator from New York. She was considered a good senator. She was bipartisan, worked both sides, and got along with senators from both sides of the political divide. But we saw that she still had that residual resentment among people that she just was not able to connect with. And that wasn't just people on the right. Hillary Clinton had problems with people on the left. There were a lot of people who were liberals. A lot of young women did not like Hillary Clinton, did not support her. There were a lot of people within the black community, Black Lives Matter. Michelle Alexander wrote a blistering, account of Hillary Clinton in the New York Times, and felt, so there were many people who did not, African Americans and others who were not necessarily supportive of Hillary Clinton or her husband. One man said himself, why he voted for Trump in 2020, a black man said, didn't mention his name, he said because he could never forgive the Clintons because of the three-strike law. He said he had so many number of relatives who went to prison on, minor charges and things like that as well for 10 to 15 years, whatever. So he said, he never could forgive the Clintons for that, and as well, and for the law. Now she came and apologized in 2016 for that. I think it was hard for her to give apologies and stuff as well. And I think her message, her campaign message, she made some very tactical errors. She didn't go to Michigan. Okay, she didn't go to Wisconsin. She didn't go to Pennsylvania. And those three traditionally were three Democratic strongholds. Now, why you would not go to these states and campaign was beyond me. And I think Hillary Clinton tried to play it safe on many levels. She largely, Donald Trump, whether you like him or not, you knew what he could understand what he was saying, whether you agreed with it or not. Jobs, jobs, jobs. Let's get America back to work. Let's make America great again. Now, again, that last statement, let's make America great again, could be interpreted in many ways. But the point was, you understood about the jobs, 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 and let's get America back to work. Hillary Clinton, I mean, I don't know if you can tell me anything she really stood for. I think her campaign was very, her message was very, very muddled. You know, it was almost like double speak. She was for TBI before she was against it. I mean, you know, so I mean, she just really did not have any kind of direct answer that could connect to the public. And again, like I said, nothing personal against her myself. I just don't think she was the best candidate. I think she was not a good candidate. And I think 2016, unfortunately, could have been a year like almost 2020, where the Democrats could have had a whole new set of people, fresh faces running for president. I think her selection of Tim Kaine, I think he's a decent human being, nothing against him, did not help the ticket. I'm not sure why she felt picking Tim Kaine, a white male from Virginia, was going to really help the ticket. It just did not. He did not do anything to help the ticket. So I think that was a mistake there. So I think there was a lot of errors that the campaign itself made that was simply problematic on many, many levels. And it cost on many levels too. Because I think the Democrats possibly could have won with the right candidate, could have probably won in 2016, my personal opinion. But Donald Trump was able to, also the email server didn't help. The email server didn't help as well, you know, the private emails. So there were dynamics there. But also Donald Trump's comments, the things he was making, he said himself, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, I'm paraphrasing him, and shoot somebody and still get away with it. Well, I mean, that's what he said, you know, something to that effect. And also, too, you know, grabbing women by that part of the body, you know, that tape came out, didn't seem to hurt him. So as well, because I think it's based, they asked space up, well, women dance on women, how did you feel about that? They go, I'm not voting for a husband. They said, I'm voting for a president. So it was, I mean, it was clear that didn't necessarily derail his campaign chances. And also in places where Michael Moore himself, who's the social activist himself, he kept saying in 2015 when a lot of people thought Hillary had it in the bag, and I think even Hillary, and a lot of us probably thought Hillary was going to win. I think a lot of people thought, well, even, you know, and I think even the mainstream media, I think even Donald Trump probably didn't think he was going to probably win on some level. But, you know, talking to different people, you know, Michael Moore and others saying, look, he said, I'm going across the country, and I can tell you right now, there's people in Michigan and places, and there is a great dissatisfaction out here, and I think Trump can win this election. I really, really do. And it turned out to be the case. You know, Alan Lichtman, president, not president, but professor at, I think it's George Washington University in D.C., said himself that Donald Trump was likely to win the election. So, all the numbers, I don't know, he just showed you the numbers, and the pundits and the pollsters had it all wrong. But I think a lot of people who voted for Trump did not publicly espouse their votes and their sentiment. Joe Scarborough, who does the show Morning Joe, that comes on early in the mornings, he said himself, when he went to talks and things, he'd ask people in the room, how many of you plan on voting for Donald Trump? That was in 2016. And nobody would say too much, whatever. He said, but after the talk was over, people would come up to him and say, I'm voting for him. So that was definitely there. Trump got 14% of the black male vote. You know, 14%. That's pretty significant. That's certainly more than Mitt Romney got of black votes. It's certainly more than John McCain got of black votes. And neither one of those two Republicans had any controversial issues with overtly controversial issues with the black community. Trump started off his campaign talking about Mexicans. They're rapists, they're this, they're that, but some of them are good people. So the campaign was one where it was racism, xenophobia, and a lot of other issues that I think appealed to a segment of his base. The entire base, maybe not, but there was a segment that kind of rhetoric appealed to. Trump appealed to a base of people who are longing for a 1950-ish America, maybe early 60s America, where women were largely confined to the home, did not have to compete with men for jobs by and large, where people of color were largely marginalized, knew their place, where gays and lesbians stayed in the closet, did not express who they really were. Yeah. Immigration was pretty much a minor thing, non-existent, where the nation was mostly white, blacks were largely confined here. Jews were in the picture every now and then, but still marginalized on many levels. This is America that a segment of his base desires, okay? That base itself is fighting hard to try to maintain that semblance. And they feel with Trump, this might be their opportunity, perhaps last opportunity, to return to that America. Well, I mean, I think that's not going to be without a fight, okay? Because there's America that definitely is going to resist that, and fight as it can. But I do think there's a segment that wanted that. Yes, I do think there's a segment that voted for Trump on populist messages, that wanted economic change, and really definitely felt that he was going to bring that in. Race was not so much of their concern as it was economic. So I think there were a variety of people. And as I said, with the religious segment, a segment of religious, smaller segment of religious, they saw Trump as hopefully maybe enacting some of the Supreme Court. That's what they were looking for. The religious right and others, they were looking at the Supreme Court. And right now, the Supreme Court is a 5-4 court. And if he gets reelected, there's a good chance they can make that a 7-2 or whatever the court could be. So that could be a generational dynamic. Already, Joe Biden said if he is the nominee and becomes president, he will appoint a black woman to the Supreme Court. You know, I think he probably would. I don't think he wouldn't, but they're definitely seeing the Supreme Court. The right has always had its eyes on the court. The right has had they saw in the 1960s what the left was able to do with the courts. Martin King Jr. with the Civil Rights Bill of 64, Civil Rights Act of 64, Voting Rights Act of 65. The right took a playbook from the left because in the 60s, the left was the religious party, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. They saw, because the right, up until about the 1950s and 60s, really didn't get involved in politics too much. They, had magazines, things like that, like National Review and stuff, but they never ever got involved in politics. They kind of felt that, they kept politics at a distance. But they saw in 1964 when Lyndon Johnson pretty much demolished Barry Goldwater in the election. At that point, they were so humiliated that they felt after that they started a cottage industry of magazines, think tanks, centers, and they have right now unlimited resources, whereas the left got a little more dormant. And they saw the success that the left had with the courts that they enacted. The more majority is pretty much a reaction to the left in the 60s. And they saw getting in politics and trying to achieve those similar results. And to some degree, they didn't necessarily do it as effectively as they thought they would with Reagan or George W. Bush Sr. and even George W. Bush Jr. But ironically, they've done it with Donald Trump. And the president, you would think, likely would not have been as amenable to their desires and to their interests. So, as we see, politics makes strange bedfellows, as that old saying goes. 2016, it was interesting, and right after that, immediately, those days when Trump had gotten elected, those same people as president, when he got elected, who said, well, I'm not voting for Hillary, and I think a lot of them felt that she was going to win anyway, and if she does something goes wrong, they can say, well, I didn't vote for her anyway, and I never liked her, I didn't vote for her anyway. But those same people who were like, going to rallies and things like that as well, they, went to bed that night or whatever, and then when they woke up the next day, when they looked at their cell phones or saw a newspaper or saw television where it said President Trump, and they saw Trump and his family, walking through the, what happened? What happened? What happened? Well, what happened is you didn't vote. That's what happened. Trump's base came out and voted in extreme numbers, and that's what happened. And then it was like, you had protests several days later in different cities like New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, and other places. Not my president, not my president. Well, yes, he is. He won. Okay, he won. Well, he didn't win the popular vote. Well, Hillary Clinton did win the popular vote, but we know our country chooses based on the electoral college. Okay, so we know that. Okay, the country chooses on the electoral college. So that is how we select our presidents. So based on that fact, he won. Okay, so there's been a debate about getting rid of the electoral college, which you may have heard. I mean, that may come up, but right now, Trump was able to win based on people who were hungry for change in places like, Pennsylvania, which is usually a reliable Democratic state, which you got senior citizens, large black populations in Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, and blue-collar Democrats. They're some of them are really conservative and stuff, but they're a Democrat. Pennsylvania should be an extremely reliable Democrat. When you see Pennsylvania going when people say play states like Pennsylvania are in play in October and stuff, the Democrat Party's probably in trouble. If states like Arizona and Mississippi are in play, as they were in 1996, that means Republicans were in trouble. Okay, certain states should just be a given that you're going to win them if you're a Democrat Republican, at least for the time being. The demographics will eventually change, and we'll see how that changes as well. But right now, Trump won Michigan, He won Pennsylvania. He won states that other people did not necessarily, Wisconsin, that they did not think he was going to win. And, you know, it definitely showed there was a hunger in this country for some type of change. People were hurting. This doesn't mean the Democrats did not have a loyal base of support. Black women were 94% of the Democratic Party base. That is the most loyal constituency of the Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton got 94% of the black female vote. Okay, so that definitely shows you black women overwhelmingly support Hillary Clinton. But outside of that, other groups were a little more mixed in the message. She didn't get support of young people. She didn't get support of younger blacks. So there was a generational divide there. Certainly didn't get support of a lot of other, groups that people relied on. 2018, we've seen a lot of women of color elected to Congress and represented districts. I think a lot of people who did not vote in 2016 decided I better vote in 2018. So the House went to Democratic control as well. The Senate is still remaining Republican, although this year they said there are like 4 or 5 Senate seats that are very, very too close to call that couldn't flip. And all the Democrats really need about 2 or 3 seats. And if they get those 4 or 5 seats, then Mitch McConnell's going to be minority leader, or might be out period. There's the vote. So that remains to be seen. We'll find out in November. But that is all the more reason why people need to get to the polls, depending upon your political persuasion, to vote. 2020, we're right now in the middle of election year. Trump has a few people running against him, I think William Weld and others, but right now he has no really serious opposition for the Republican nomination that we see. Right now, as we speak at this moment, the Democratic primary, the Democratic race is pretty much a 2-man race. Joe Biden from Delaware, my home state, and Bernie Sanders, Vermont, by way of New York. Is the 2 nominees. So we'll see how that turns out. Tomorrow is another primary. Michigan is the primary. There's some big states running tomorrow. So we'll see how that turns out as well. But other than that, we'll see what goes on. Race in and of itself is still a factor, and we cannot deny those situations as it maintains itself. So I'm going to stop right there, and I'm going to open it up right now for questions.
How do you think the Democratic Party is going to deal with repercussions that they're still suffering from in 2016? We know they sabotaged the Bernie campaign, and a recent Gallup poll shows that a lot of the Bernie supporters went and voted for Trump just to sabotage Hillary's campaign, because while you had the Never Trumpers in the Republican Party, there was a small movement of Never Hillary in the Democratic Party as well. And they've never quite addressed that out in the open. Donna Brazile resigned over that from the DNC.
Well, I think she was asked to step down. I think it was somebody, I think she provided a question to Hillary Clinton in advance, which was something, as a commentator for CNN. She's now a commentator for Fox News. Brilliant woman, but I think they violated something. It was controversial. I don't know all the details of it. But yeah, she was asked to step down. And she was definitely a strong Clinton surrogate, supporter of Clinton. She was the vice chair of the Democratic Party, and acting interim chair for a while, so it wouldn't be surprising that she would have the Democratic Party's interest at heart. Doesn't mean that was okay to do what happened, but yeah, but she was, she's a big name within the Democrat politics. Now, your other question about, you were saying that there is definitely people, like I said, the populist wing, that both Trump and Bernie Sanders in 2016, and Bernie Sanders is doing it today in 2020, ran populist campaigns. Yeah. Trump's populist campaign was based more on a jingoistic, racially inflected type of populism, whereas Bernie Sanders, I thought, was more economic, economic-oriented populism. So there were different populist campaigns, and I think there are many people who voted for Bernie, and some did vote for Trump. But I also think the reverse could happen, because those who are in it for economic issues, those people who voted for Trump in 2016, if Bernie became the nominee, could easily vote for Bernie Sanders. I think I would easily vote for Bernie Sanders. So I think that's what I'm saying. I think that that could happen too.
Well, I was also going to say, there's also one group of voters that nobody ever pays attention to, but according to just about every political op-ed poll that's out there, military veterans are the largest group of swing voters in the United States. And they are known to swing either way. And Hillary Clinton burned herself with Benghazi, and a lot of veterans, and I'm deep into the military veteran community, lost complete faith in her after the whole Benghazi and email scandal came out, because a lot of veterans felt they could no longer trust her with their security. When you're out there on the line, you you got to know the people behind you have your back. And I think Hillary just did a lot to hurt herself in general. And Americans are tired of corruption. They see it every day, and they thought they saw someone getting away with something. And that may sound ignorant, but people, that's how people feel.
I mean, to be honest, there were people who said the campaign, some of the comments about Hillary was she was untrustworthy. I mean, that's what they said. I mean, I don't know if she's any more untrustworthy than Trump, but I'm saying that there was.
She was untrustworthy.
Okay, I'm saying, but that was a perception. Some people felt not both across party lines. We know there were people who said that they felt untrustworthy. I don't think the email server helped. I mean, the secret email server. I think those kind of things didn't work against her. But I'm saying I think there were a lot. I think Hillary Clinton came to the presidential campaign with a lot of baggage to begin with, and I just think it was not the most sagacious thing for the Democratic Party to put so much emphasis around her and promote somebody who had such high negatives to begin with. I think that was just not the wisest thing to do. And I doubt they're going to ever do something like that again if there's a candidate who decides to run and has those level of negatives. But yes, I think military veterans do tend to be very politically fluid in their beliefs. But I also think too, I think many military veterans probably were more inclined to probably vote against Hillary Clinton anyway. I don't think they're going to probably vote for her to begin with, at least the ones who.
You don't think that even the election in 2008 was not going to wait, even though it was raising Obama. Don't you think that it wasn't turning around at the same time and slapping a whole group of people that had rendered faithful service to the United States of America at the same time?
With who? Hillary or President Obama?
No, John McCain.
Oh,
John McCain kind of he had to be the sacrificial lamb for Barack Obama's elevation, right? And so there were a lot. I'm a Democrat, and I've been one since 1980, and I did not vote. I voted for Obama over McCain. But at the time, it hurt me deep down in my soul to throw the switch to do that. I will tell you that right now, it hurt me a lot, because I knew exactly how much the gentleman had sacrificed, especially someone like McCain. And those men fought that war, and they never, ever got to have one of their own in there. And it might not mean much to everybody else as they blow on down the track, but when you literally have millions of people that go over and get things like Agent Orange and shot at and legs blown off and these sorts of things, and then kind of their desires are shunted over onto a sidetrack, while other people who are also deserving, there is absolutely no doubt that you have a track full of minorities that are black and Hispanic, and then the larger track that is, I would just assume do away with black and Hispanic, because I ask women, why not even that one flying down the track first? But I kind of agree with him saying that it boiled up some bad blood. When you get somebody like Hillary Clinton that thinks, well, I just won't obey the law, I won't turn documents in, I don't care, you can send me top secret stuff and I will squirrel it away at the house, and I won't do right by any sort of law that's been read out to me, be in charge of it. And then I agree exactly with what he said, and I voted for Hillary. That being said, I voted for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump, and I absolutely detest the man. But I tell you what, I had to hold my nose to throw that switch for Hillary Clinton. I did not think that woman right there was much of anything, and I think she is one of the very worst candidates that I've ever voted for. So I'll throw that piece up.
Well, I think there are people, I mean, certainly as I said, there are people, she's definitely a polarizing figure. I don't think that's news to anybody who came to this talk tonight. I think we all know that, Hillary Clinton has people who do like her quite a bit, but she also has people that despise her. And not just her husband as well. I think they're definitely, Clintons are a polarizing.
He was a draft dodger, right? You have a draft dodger in there, right? And then you end up with another draft dodger and George W. Bush, right? And then you end up with someone who didn't do any service like Obama, and everything, and now we've got another draft dodger in there with Trump, so
Well,
I
the
think
case
he's
with the-
absolutely
and the
right.
case with the-
We
case with
haven't
all
had
fairness
it going our way in a long time to people who actually.
In all
get the
fairness,
country
to
going.
President Obama, there was no draft going on at that time. He was doing, Donald Trump was older, so there was no draft.
He's only a few months older than I am, and I did military service.
But
so
he was
we
still about
were
to.
enormous amounts of us did because we thought that the draft would come back. And I mean, with all due respect, Barack Obama was smoking pot and snorting cocaine and hanging out with the Ching gang while I was doing military service. And I love Barack Obama and everything, and I voted for him twice, but I did military service and I've got a doctor's degree, and Barack Obama would not be able to say with his aloofness and not processing literally hundreds of thousands of veterans' claims that he would have any claim to any love by veterans. I don't know where it would come from. And I really did admire, I think he was one of the most elegant presidents we've had, but he was aloof, and he let hundreds of thousands of veterans' claims sit there and rot because he never went down there and stirred the pot. And I think an aloof claim for Obama is going to be something that's going to be decades out. I think right now, I agree with you, we are arguing about the status of race in the United States of America, how we got to this point.
Sad that he had to do that.
And it is sad.
But my point is, I'm saying, but yeah, we are, but there are a lot of things that have happened to make us forced to do that.
But it would have been nice if he had done military service. If Barack Obama had done military service and had come in there, it would have been nice to have been able to compare them straight up John McCain. What it did was it left a lot of people thinking this man who is so damned honorable over here was just basically just.
But who was that done by? It
was not John McCain's fault. It was at the end of an unpopular Republican presidency, but he ended up being held out there as a butt, and it just, I don't know, it left a lot of people who were in conservative areas, people around military bases and stuff like this, with kind of a deep-seated distaste for it. And I think when it came along, it made it all the easier for people to convert these voters who had voted for Obama back over to voting for Trump, which I can't even hardly believe happened.
Well, like I said, I think most people probably, people who probably voted for Trump, probably a lot of people who voted for Trump probably don't even like Trump. I mean, a lot of times people vote for people who, let's be honest, they may not even necessarily like that person, but people vote for how you're going to impact on their lives. There are a lot of people who probably didn't necessarily like Obama per se. Basically, they actually did studies who said, they asked people in Pennsylvania and stuff, white people said, and some of them used racial slurs and everything else in places like, I'm voting for the N-word, the nigger, or whatever. That's what they said, because they didn't trust McCain with the economy. McCain said he was going to continue Bush's economy. But we knew in 2008 that was not the good thing to be doing, so that didn't help him as well. So those dynamics were there, but there was a point as well. Right.
Two questions.
Yes.
First is about your working methods. One of the more impressive things about your book, and I've read 2/3 of it, is that these massive bibliographies that you have at the end of each essay. I was wondering how you managed to keep track of all your sources. Do you have some sort of a massive filing cabinet in your office? Do you keep stuff in some sort of a database, because it's really kind of impressive?
Well, I appreciate that. What I did was, like I said, academics were taught to do research and document and footnote and endnote. Well, I'm more of an endnoter, but same thing. But after decades of being in academia, you just learn how to, look at something and be able to say, well, this is something that's going to probably be of use to an article I want to write about, and I can use this as a source. So and that takes years of practice. It doesn't happen overnight for most people unless you're just a natural researcher. But I think that that's how it takes years of work, and you learn how learn the tricks of the trade and how to save things. And yes, as a historian, we save things. we want the hard written word, the hard written word.
Okay, so here's my second question. You sound like you would be equally at home in a political science department or history department. How did you happen to in history rather than political science?
Well, that's interesting. I started off college as an English journalism major. So, and I still freelance right now, as people know. So journalism was always one of my loves stuff as well. I have an article that's going to be on Medium later tonight, so you can check it out. But I look at I took an English class at the University of Delaware when I started in the mid-1980s, and a lot of my English professors would say, you seem to worry more about historical matters and anthropological matters as opposed to literary matters. So, and I always liked social studies as a child when I was in school. I always gravitated towards social studies in elementary school and middle school. Social studies is one of my favorites. Got more interested in English in high school with there. But when I got to college, I said, well, I took a history class with a professor named Jack Ellis at Delaware at that time, and he was very, very. I did, okay the class, but the point was, he asked me one day, well, how would you like? I switched to history, and I said, yeah, I think I might switch. I think I'm going to switch to history, and that's what happened. Pardon the pun, the rest is history, But I became a history, major and. Moved in that realm, and that's how I find myself in. But I'm also very interdisciplinary. I'm a historian, but my work is extremely interdisciplinary. Like I said, I look at journalism, I look at sociology, I look at philosophy. Because to me, history is interdisciplinary by its very nature. History is the mother of all disciplines. So history is very anthropological. And history is very sociological. History is very political. History is very, very rhetorical. So all those disciplines are historical on many, many levels. So I think that's why you see it. History is very medical. I think in that way, studying economics. So I'm a historian, but I look at different fields and I incorporate that into my work. Does that answer your question?
So when writing the book, what was the sort of the inspiration to write the book, and then sort of what was your inspiration or process in narrowing down some of the topics, because you have it divided into sections, but you span across a lot of different issues in terms of like entertainment and politics, and so all good issues, all good topics. Sort of, how did you sort of choose and narrow things down, and what was the inspiration behind that?
I looked at some of these are essays I had written over in the past, and some of them refined and updated, and I looked at the issues that were facing America at that particular, were facing America. The book was published, 6 months ago, and these are some of the issues that are really facing America right now in the contemporary age. And like I said, the book says, race in contemporary America, and I think, violence against black bodies, we can't ignore that. I think we could not have. I don't think I could have really. The book could be all that legitimate if I didn't mention anything about the Obamas. Aretha Franklin just passed away, so that's we got to give credit.
Yeah, that was so funny too.
Right. So I think a lot of it was going on in the culture at that time and stuff as well. Like I said, obviously the book will come out later this year. Next year, I would have something Toni Morrison, Diane Carroll, people like that and stuff as well. But I think that these are some of the issues I looked at. Prince had passed away the past couple of years ago and stuff as well. And wanted to do an essay on Michael Jackson, but the publishers didn't want me. I think we were kind of myself was glad, but I think so. We had a shot with it, but I would have one because I know people probably asked me, "Hey, can you email me? How come you know anything on Michael Jackson?"
Yeah, because that's sort of what I was getting at too. There was so much. You could include. There's a lot of stuff going on right now, right? It's always stuff, and so narrowing it down.
And so I could have another book with a whole bunch of different topics.
Sure can. And so thinking about what.
Same thing with Kobe Bryant. You
what
wait.
to leave out,
It'll
what to
have to be.
include.
There'll have to be a period that it sits there. Okay. Look. Kobe Bryant's victim's blood was on his body, and Kobe Bryant's, stuff was in a teenager's body that he had met some 30, 45 minutes prior. Kobe Bryant sexually assaulted a woman, a young girl, and Gayle King came out and mentioned it after the thing happened, and Snoop Dogg and a bunch of other people, roughly half of the hip hop community, turned around and jumped on Gayle King, saying that she ought to be killed, raped, you name the bad thing, because she had mentioned that Kobe Bryant had been arrested for assaulting this person. And I think it's along the same thing with Michael Jackson and his history. That it's a thing because of the state that we're in, and publishing and these sorts of things. They want this stuff to go down the road 20 years before somebody drags all of it out and makes a national enquirer.
I think there's something about it. I think it's also a little more complex than that too. I think there were different people who felt that the timing of Gayle King's interview may not have been the best. I mean, yes, we know Kobe, the young lady eventually dropped charges, but the point was, he admitted to the affair. Nobody's saying that. But the point is, I think that people talk about the timing of it. No, I think, probably she could have done it, but I think Snoop was wrong. Snoop Dogg was also wrong in how he handled the situation too. You don't threaten anybody and things of that nature. So I think there were problems on both sides. And I write a piece about that on Medium about, the dynamics between black men and black women in our society. And there is definitely that friction that is taking place there and stuff as well. So.
Well, it's kind of related to the topic at hand, but I wonder if you would comment a little bit on the issues of like cancel culture, political correctness, trigger warnings, and I think the idea was to try to sort of enhance sensitivity around conversations surrounding race and difference. But I wonder if you'd comment on whether or not you think that's done what it set out to do, or if it's in fact made, topics more problematic.
I always look at terms like political correctness kind of as a red herring initially. I think political correctness, what does that mean? How does that term, political correctness to me, I'm not interested in being politically correct, okay? I'm interested in being correct, okay? That's more important to me, okay? So that's how I see it. And to me, sometimes you gotta be very careful how people use that word, because those can be code words for people who also may want to use certain agendas, whether it's right wing, in some cases even left wing, political correctness can be a term. And I think there are a lot of code words that are out there now that many people use and stuff as well to look at. So I think that, things like trigger warnings and stuff, and I've written about that. I don't believe in using trigger warnings, no. I think trigger warnings to me, first of all, I think that you gotta be careful with trigger warnings because I think they can be used as weapons for people who may not want to hear certain things in class, whether, from across the political spectrum. They can be used by conservatives, they can be used by liberals.
I think what he's saying, though, is it appropriate in the discussion of history to even have such a thing as a trigger warning?
As I said, I think, no, I don't use them. I don't believe in trigger warnings. As I said myself, no. I said, I put on my syllabi, I'll say, class, there might be some sensitive material in the class, and that's your call. You've made an adult decision to go to college and things as well. Now, that being said, would I talk about some of the things I talk about in my graduate seminar that I went to a group of 4th and 5th graders? No. I think it's things about sexuality and stuff. I don't think that would be appropriate to talk to them about this type of thing on graphic violence. But college-age students, adults, yes. I mean, you should be able to certainly handle those situations. First of all, I'm not a counselor. I'm not trained in counseling to do that. And as I said, I think they can also be. If that's the case, teachers would never talk about controversial things or what is perceived as controversial, because you may have a class of a lot of people, and you don't know what you might set student A off or student B off, or say, you'd be the whole time trying to find out what can I say to not offend this one or that, whatever. No, so no, I don't, and I think also, I think trigger warnings can be used as agendas for people who don't want to hear certain things. And somebody like me, in issues of race and gender and things, there are people who would not necessarily want to hear certain things, or may want to hear their version of, it's okay, I think some people it's okay as long as you're talking how I see it. And I think, that's just not the way things work. There's two sides to every story, multiple sides to every story. So as far as cancel culture, which is big in the news now, former President Obama talked about cancel culture and how he felt that I think too many people are, I think, the pendulum has probably, went this way on some level. But the pendulum used to be this way. I think the pendulum, it'll get back here. Like anything else, it'll get back here because things can happen that people don't reach. But I also think, years ago, there were people, like I said, some of the people who voted for Trump, as I said earlier in the conversation, who would like to have that America where they could say things about blacks and gays and Jews and Hispanics and women and others, disabled people, with no consequences. Say no matter how hateful, no matter how nasty, you don't have free speech, but there's also a way to try to keep you humane. Who was it? James Watt, the late James Watt, one time he made a comment in 1980, during the Reagan years anyway. He said, I've got every kind of group, every kind of mixture you name. I got a black, 2 Jews, and a cripple. Now, really? That's exactly what he said. A black, 2 Jews, a woman, and a cripple.
What's the name of that?
That was really, really offensive. Okay, that's offensive.
That was like the thing that came out from the comedian. What's the comedian's name? The old dude. He used to always say that the guys that would come through the door died from a heroin overdose. Help me.
But I think does that answer your question about cancel culture? I think because cancel culture right now, like I said, I'm about that too. But I think cancel culture. There are a lot of young people I think who are going to be in for a rude awakening, in the sense that because you do have free speech. And my philosophy is you got to be very careful when you want to infringe upon other people's free speech, because if you try to take other people's free speech away, it's only a matter of time before you can be silenced. Okay, you try to silence other people, it might be a matter of time before you can be silenced. And that's why I think you saw the media, say what you want to say about the media, but they've done a very good job when certain administrations jumped on and said, well, CNN is not real news, or Fox is not real news. You've seen both all the networks converge and jump and defend each other on that one, even though they may have different agendas, because they realize they might attack us at CNN. Who's to say at some point somebody else gets involved and they might start attacking Fox News? So they all realize, even though they may have different political views, whether it was the Obama administration was somewhat critical of Fox News, but you saw all the other news people back Fox News. And then you saw all the other people saying, CNN, MSNBC's not news, but you saw Fox, other people all come to MSNBC's defense. Because even though they may be competing views, they also realize that they still all are reporting news. And if one gets attacked, it's only a matter of time for the other to get attacked, okay? They realize, you get somebody saying the climate can change, say, well, I don't like that MSNBC after all. That's a little too radical for me. I don't like that Fox News, that's a little conservative. So they also realize, if one can be silenced, they all can be silenced. So that's why I think it's very, very crucial that we have free speech. Either you have it or not. How you respond to free speech is for free speech. We have libel laws that doesn't mean you say anything. You can't slander people, you can't directly threaten people, so I'm going to kill you and all that kind of. Those are civil rights intimidation laws. We have that as well. That point is, put somebody's life in danger. But free speech is a part of our Constitution, whether you like it or not. That's what we're here for. Either you have free speech or you don't. And I'm a person who's a big proponent of the First Amendment. I'm a member of heterodoxy. I'm a member of a lot of these places because to me, it matter. If any group comes out and says, I'm against free speech, and another group comes out and says, I'm for it, I'll join forces with that group that says they're for it. Because as far as I'm concerned, either you have free speech or you do not. It's like Patrick Henry almost said, paraphrase him, give me liberty or give me death. Because if you can't have any free speech, then the republic and democracy is gone.
And like you said about free speech, there's already a protection tool to ensure you cannot use your free speech to willfully engage and incite others to commit violent harm anyway. That's already in there, so we've got that covered. But I was going to ask, so we know race is actually just a social construct anyway, designed by the elites to keep the lower class people divided against each other anyway. But I kind of had an epiphany in my own personal situation back when I was enrolling my children for school. My wife's African American. Both of my children are mixed. Yet my kids look white. Yet society views them as black. But now we're seeing in the United States more than ever, especially since what was it? Virginia versus Loving, I believe it was.
Loving versus Virginia.
Yeah. We're seeing more and more so-called interracial marriages now, with so many different groups coming together. Is that not going to outrun society's constraint on who is who and what color they are? Because there are so many different peoples coming together and having children, and those children are going out and having children. So sooner or later, that's going to outrun that social construct. Sooner or later, that's going to
that's
fall
the big debate about
apart.
whether race is a social construct. That could be, that could be a biological question. We have a biological shit, right?
Well, it died out pretty much in Brazil, though.
Well, I mean, our nation is more, certain places like Latin America, there's so many, there's just a number of categories, but even here in the United States, interracial mixing and, to use miscegenation, that's not a new thing. Okay, that's happening since the dawn of the Republic. The founding fathers, Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, other people, many of them had, black offspring, so that's not unusual. And then it's been in the 19th century, in cities like Chicago and other places, Irish and black and other people were marrying each other so much. There were laws people who did not like it because they wanted to keep a pure race, whatever that meant, and they wanted to outlaw it as well. So in Louisiana, it was such a common place among French and other people. They had categories: octoroons, quadroon, Creole, biracial, mulatto. Today, yes, it's not unusual to see a number of biracial people within my own family. I have a biracial niece and nephew. So my point is, most people today, here in the Tri-Cities, wherever you look at, that's not unusual. But biracial people are not, they've never been unusual to be. President Barack Obama's biracial. So my point is that biracial black people exist. But the law has said, used to be the one-drop rule. If you had any black blood in you at all, you were considered black. That was the law. And then think about it, if you had one drop of black blood in you, you were considered black. Now that makes about as much sense of any black person saying if they had one drop of white blood in them, they could be white. You might as well mean about that.
But it doesn't work that way.
No, but
because society, in its racist past, says it doesn't work.
Well, that's my point. I'm saying any biracial person, with their black, and no matter what the race the other person's parent is, they're considered black. You know, if you're black, Italian, black, Jewish, black, Irish, black, whoever, you're considered black. The law says you are black. I mean, that's how the law is made. You know, so I mean, now people may down the road, you know, if you're multiracial, there are people that are multiracial. So my point is, I mean, that is, but the law has pretty much said you're black, and that's you've been pretty much the case. President Obama, for example, who is biracial, since you brought it up, I mean, people saw him as a black man. You know, the black president. But it was kind of interesting whenever he did something good or significant, like when Osama bin Laden was assassinated. People like, you know, some people got to, you know, that's my brother, black president like that. Well, he's biracial. You know, every time he did something that was really good for the entire country, he was biracial. But if he ever did anything negative, he was black. You know, so I mean, it's like, you know, it's almost like this kind of. People had this kind of Jekyll and Hyde move, but you know, anything was so bad, and you know, but when they had the rollout plan for the healthcare, they would do all that well. Well, he's black. What did you expect? You know, anything else that was successful and everything else. Well, he's not black. He's biracial. I mean, so, I mean, the point is like he's black when it was convenient for them to see him as black, but he was biracial when it was otherwise. So my point is that dynamic is there. It's almost, you know, but yes, you're finding a lot of people who are considered racially ambiguous, and as time goes along, you're going to have, you know, if your children, if they one day when they have children, I mean, it depends when they marry, they're going to be seen, you know, there are people, their categories now called other, or people don't even answer the question, they're called other, or just it's called multiracial. So I think that, you know, black, white, I still think we live in a society where race is still going to be, for at least for the next decade, couple decades, it's going to still be a very major factor in our society, and I don't think we can really ignore that yet. And I think we haven't got to that point that where we have. Look, we've made significant progress in our country, as I said. No other country could have elected a person in the United States after passing the Civil Rights Bill in '64, which basically gave people of color the status of immigrants. That's basically what that did. They gave people of color the status of immigrants. The Voting Rights Act of 1965, which I mentioned earlier in the conversation, if you lived in the South prior to 1965, that was like apartheid in South Africa. You were living under an apartheid system. You could not vote. You had to pay taxes. You had to go to war and everything else, but you could not vote. But think about that. You know, so I mean, so that was a system that was a major injustice until 1965. So the reality is, this country's had a deep, deep history of race. It's been primarily, for the most part, a black white country, but more recently, Hispanics have overtaken blacks as the largest minority. Asians are rapidly becoming the largest minority in this country, and even within different groups, you've got distinctive groups. Hispanics, you've got Puerto Ricans, you've got Mexicans, you've got Dominicans, you've got, you know, a variety of people, Spaniards, you know, who are, you know, as well in Hispanic America. So they're not just one group. You have a lot of Hispanics who are white, you know, who certainly pass for white. You know, black people, with the black, you got Jamaican, you got Caribbeans, you got African nationalists, you got black Americans, you got Aborigines. So with any group, you know, you got, certainly within Europe, look how diverse Europe is. It's a white continent, but look how diverse. You got, you know, Belgium, Germany, Denmark, and look how unique those cultures are within the United. Each of them have their own distinct. So with any culture, you're going to have that distinction. You know, Asians, you got Koreans, Japanese, Vietnamese, Laotians, Pacific Islanders. I mean, you know, so you know, Arabs, you got, you know, Iranians, you got Saudi Arabians, you know. So any group of people within that group of people, you've got diversity within that group. So no group is totally monolithic based on those factors alone. That being said, I think, you know, people say, well, I don't see race, or some people say that. Well, that's ridiculous, because the first thing you obviously see. I think what they're trying to say is maybe I'm colorblind, which and to me is kind of offensive too, because there's not that much difference in being colorblind and blind. I mean, if you're colorblind, that's not a good thing either, because you should just see somebody's color. Then maybe you can see beyond it. I mean, I think people are trying to be, I understand where they're coming from, but to say I'm colorblind, well, no, you should not be colorblind. You should be color aware, but you certainly should be. That should not let you. That doesn't make you prejudiced. But I'm saying, you know, how can you not look at this room? I see people that are white. I see another person's black. I see men. I see women. So I mean, to say you don't see race and gender, really? I mean,
it's really easy. I will tell you how easy it is. You do for 1 minute. You do for 1 minute. Y'all see your genders and races and everything for 1 minute. Let me tell you something. I've had the Russians right over there who are all white, they're all Christian, and just pull the bolt back on their machine gun, and they look their teeth like this, like they're grinning. And what that means is they're opening up their ear holes right there and blast your guts out. And when they're like that, you know what? You totally forget about color and everything else, because you know the people that are all weird looking and all different looking are the ones on your side. Ask me how I know all this stuff. The first bomb that drops, everybody running around and around in circles, and they'll forget all about it. Now, they may get on a plane, and they might fly back home, and they might start it up again and everything, but let me tell you something. When it comes down to it, and the enemy's over there, all I saw was people grabbing a hold of the seat of somebody else's pants and weren't caring what. color they were and hauling them out of the flames.
Well, I think the military, you know,
It focuses
1948,
your mind.
President Truman integrated the armed forces. He made it possible to get to them. So, yeah, so we know the military, people are forced to get along with each other. Yeah, if you run up Hamburger Hill and you're in that, you know, you're in a foxhole or whatever, most people are probably not worried too much about whether somebody's black, Asian, Latino, gay, or whatever. But you want to make sure you're surviving. So that's really, really important. So I think that, you know, so that's a certain reality stuff as well. Any other comments or questions anybody want to talk?
I've got one comment.
Go ahead.
Now, one of the things you said right off of the Aretha Franklin, and I want to correct you on this one. Ella Fitzgerald is probably one, if not the greatest singer who ever lived, one of the very greatest singers who ever lived. And Aretha Franklin sang on an album with her called Let Them Sing, which a lot of people who know anything about jazz and singing will know that that's one of the greatest albums of women singing ever.
Don't get me wrong, Ella Fitzgerald.
She had a 3 octave. She had a 3 octave range, which I was looking here to correct to see if I was correct. And she has what they say is an extremely rare vocal range. And when we were younger, I don't know, this gentleman right here might be plenty a lot younger than me, but when I was younger, they used to have a commercial called the Memorex commercial. And it had a tape that said, is it live or is it Memorex? Well, they had Ella up there, like that, pow, the glass shattered. And then she was the singer for Nelson Riddle's orchestra and Duke Ellington and all of this. And they would just turn the machine on and bust a glass. And I said, well, is it Ella or is it the tape? So she was for my generation, she was the gold standard by which you would measure all these ones on voice or what is these stupid things where they put the hat on their head, they dress them up as cats and dogs and all of this stuff. Well, the Masked Singer. They have all of these people singing. Oh yeah, it's a big thing. Dionne Warwick, and who else? Patti LaBelle. They have all of these great black singers of the past who won multiple Academy Awards, and they went on and they were thrown off for people who had no singing experience. So it's a thing.
You mean Grammy
Awards? No.
Academy Awards?
No, it is a show on television.
No, you said people won the Grammy
They
Awards.
had won Grammy Awards like Dionne Warwick.
That's what I
She
said,
had
you
won
said
10,
Academy.
and Patti LaBelle, she's won like no telling how many.
Yeah.
And they were in this Masked Singer thing, and they were out there singing, and they got voted off. And the people that got voted off, I guess, were people who had never even cut one album.
Well, that's kind of like, that's the American Idol dynamic. But my point is, we can just, that's, when we start getting the entertainers, who's the best actor, who's the best singer, who's the best dancer, that's subjective. But I'm saying, Aretha Franklin was known as a 5-octave voice, and in the state of Michigan made her a voice and natural resource. This is no way of dismissing Ella Fitzgerald. I think she was a great singer. This is not saying that I think, but who's the greatest, and those things are debatable. So I don't want to get into, we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that, because when you start getting entertainment, that's going to be very, very, we might like this actress, we might like that actress, we might like that, so I don't want to.
There's some things you need to understand. I'm also a Holocaust historian. And when it comes around to people, when you're talking about Ella Fitzgerald, you're talking about people from back in the 30s and 40s, people who faced what I would call real racism. All right. Now let me tell you something. Let me tell you something. You go back to these people like Ella Fitzgerald and stuff, and they had a very, very, very difficult time indeed. Duke Ellingtons of the world and Louis Armstrongs and these folks, I think they kind of laid the groundwork, is what I want to say, for everything else that has come along. And I might be a bit older, and maybe it's just, my point of view and everything. But when I was young, I sat down and watched Count Basie and Duke Ellington and all of these people, and they were the ambassadors to the United States. When we sent people overseas and we wanted to make a good impression, we sent Louis Armstrong, because he was respected in about every country there was. And we didn't have to worry about people hating on Louis Armstrong, because everybody loved him. Everybody loved Ella Fitzgerald too. And they were such giants. And I think that if you could talk to Aretha Franklin, I think one of the high points of her life was singing on the album, Letting Them Sing, with Ella Fitzgerald. It was certainly beautiful. And
you got to read my article in the book of Aretha Franklin. I got an article, and I talk about how she basically gave, the artists always get there's always predecessors who do that. Yeah, she gave Dinah Washington, people like that, other people who were predecessors gave credit. I mean, people like Whitney Houston, when she passed away a couple years ago, people like Christina Aguilera, it was clear she was influenced by Whitney Houston. I mean, I've said myself, I've had class in my pop culture class with some students of mine said, if you look at artists and things like that, within the black community, any community, they have taken on, they're pretty much, that generation's person. Like, for example, I mean, the late Nancy Wilson. Anita Baker is Nancy Wilson, really, if you want to think about it. I mean, Stephanie Mills is Patti LaBelle. I mean, if you want Diana Ross and Jodie Watley, Adetta, Tracy Chapman. I mean, so you can look at black female singers and see there's that generational dynamic. Even with white male bands. I mean, if you look at R.E.M., that's the Byrds, Oasis, the Beatles, Black Crowes, the Rolling Stones. Bobby Womack, although he's black, Rod Stewart's Bobby Womack. I mean, my point is, artists have always deeply been influenced by generational people. Again, this is not to take away from Ella Fitzgerald. I think she's a good singer. But I'm saying, but we get into about who is the greatest. I mean, yes, every generation has had its predecessors, and they've looked at other people and they've provided a roadmap. Diane Carroll, who just passed away last October. I mean, Diane Carroll, was one of my favorite entertainers. She was glamorous. Halle Berry said herself, she was an inspiration for her. I mean, Diane Carroll, she carried Washington. Diane Carroll was kind of known as, she was kind of, I'd say in some ways, the black female Sidney Poitier. And in a lot of ways, because she very seldom, outside of, she played Claudine and Welfare Mother, but for the most part, Diane Carroll was Park Avenue, whether it was Dynasty, she played the wealthy Dominique Devereaux. She played on White Collar recently, a very June Ellington, the widow there. She was the first black woman to replace a white woman on Broadway in Agnes of God. Very seldom did she play women who were downtrodden. She always played women who were upscale, all of this white. Sidney Poitier was an ambassador for many other later people like Denzel Washington and others that came along. Very seldom did Sidney Poitier ever play the buck. I mean, he was always, the defiant once he was a fugitive, but for the most part, he was always this very elegant, well-spoken, formidably. So I mean, each group was always had people that they look upon and their predecessors, and they provide a roadmap for them.
Mary McCabe, Harry Belafonte.
Right. He's still alive. He was, 94, 95, 9, so that's definitely the case.
I was gonna, in jest say, you asked about his archival. I've had several classes with him now, and I've known him a long time. Have you ever seen Lord of the Rings where Gandalf's in the library with the books and the papers stacked high? That's his archives, but he can reach into the middle of a stack of reams of research documents and know exactly what it's all in the mind. I'm just saying that in jest, but I mean to take.
Oh,
Well, if there are any questions, thank all of you for coming tonight. This very engaging discussion. Thank you very much.